everyone! Welcome back to Story Hive. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Let's jump into today's story. Mom excluded my fiancé from her wedding. Due to his health issues, I refused to attend, and she turned the family against me. Then her new husband's outburst at the rehearsal dinner exposed her true colors. I have been with my fiancé Alex Theatham for 6 years now. We met during our senior year of college when we were paired up for a group project in our environmental science class. I remember being struck by his passion for conservation and his kind eyes. We quickly became friends, bonding over our shared love of nature and terrible sci-fi movies. Our relationship grew slowly but steadily. Alex was always patient and understanding, never pushing me to move faster than I was comfortable with. He knew I had some trust issues from past relationships and gave me the time and space I needed to open up. About a year into our relationship, it was a scary and uncertain time for both of us. I still remember sitting in the doctor's office, holding his hand as we listened to the explanation of what this chronic condition would mean for his life. Alex was understandably upset and worried about how this would impact our future together, but for me it only strengthened my feelings for him. Seeing how bravely he faced this diagnosis and how determined he was to not let it define him made me admire him even more. I threw myself into researching the condition, learning everything I could about how to support him. There have been tough times, of course. Alex has had a few severe flare-ups that resulted in hospital stays, but we faced each challenge together, and it has only brought us closer. Last year, on a hike to our favorite waterfall, Alex insisted on going even though he wasn't feeling great that day. He got down on one knee and proposed. It was the easiest yes of my life. Now, some backstory on my family situation. My dad passed away when I was 12. It was a relatively short battle, only about 8 months from diagnosis to the end. Those months were a blur of hospital visits, hushed conversations between my parents that would stop when I entered the room, and a growing sense of dread that I couldn't quite understand at that age. My dad was my hero. He was a high school history teacher, beloved by his students for his terrible dad jokes and genuine passion for the subject. At home, he was always up for an impromptu dance party in the kitchen or a late-night ice cream run. Losing him left a gaping hole in my life. My mom, Martha 52, was understandably devastated by Dad's death. For months she was barely functional. I remember having to remind her to eat, practically begging her to take a shower. Eventually, she threw herself into her work as a real estate agent, often leaving before I woke up and coming home long after I'd gone to bed. For years, it was just the two of us rattling around in our two-big house. We grew close out of necessity, bonding over our shared grief, but there was always a part of my mom that seemed absent, like she'd buried a piece of herself along with my dad. When I was in high school, my mom started seeing a therapist. Slowly, I saw glimpses of her old self returning. She started cooking again. Dad had always been the chef in our family, took up gardening, and even started dating a bit. Nothing serious, just a few coffee dates here and there. I went off to college feeling hopeful that my mom was finally healing. We talked often, and she seemed happier than she'd been in years. That's why I was so excited when, during my sophomore year, she called to tell me she'd met someone special. Jim 55 seemed great at first. He was a successful businessman, charming and confident. He made my mom laugh in a way I hadn't heard since before Dad died. I was thrilled for her, but over time I started noticing things. The way Jim would make subtle digs at my choice to major in environmental science instead of something practical like business. How he'd comment on my appearance, saying things like, "You'd be so pretty if you just put in a little effort." My mom always brushed it off, saying he was just teasing or that I was being too sensitive. When I introduced Alex to them, I could immediately sense my mom's disapproval. She was polite enough. Jim was openly dismissive, barely acknowledging Alex's attempts at conversation. Over the years, my mom's attitude towards Alex has only gotten worse. She's made comments about how his health issues will hold me back in life. Once, when Alex had to cancel plans with them due to a flare-up, she suggested that maybe I should find someone more reliable. I've always defended Alex, but I'll admit there were times I didn't push back as hard as I should have. I was so afraid of damaging my relationship with my mom, of losing the only parent I had left. But looking back, I realized I was letting her mistreat the person I love most in the world. That brings us to last week. My mom called, bubbling with excitement. She and Jim had gotten engaged and were planning a fall wedding. I congratulated her, pushing down my mixed feelings about Jim. Then she dropped the bombshell. I was stunned into silence for a moment. When I found my voice, I told her in no uncertain terms that this was completely unacceptable. Alex's condition is well managed, and he'd never do anything to draw attention to himself at someone else's event. Plus, he's going to be her son-in-law. How could she even think of excluding him? My mom got defensive, saying she was just being practical. She went on about how hard she'd worked to plan this wedding and how she deserved to have everything be perfect. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her that if Alex wasn't welcome, then I wouldn't be attending either. This led to a huge argument. My mom accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. She went on a long rant about how much she'd sacrificed as a single mother, how she'd put her life on hold for me, and how I owed it to her to be there on her special day. I countered that the only one being selfish was her for excluding my fiancé over something he can't control. The call ended with her in tears and me shaking with anger. Since then, she's been alternating between guilt-tripping texts, "I guess I was a terrible mother if this is how you treat me," and angry voicemails demanding I apologize. Some family members have reached out, saying I should just give in to keep the peace. My Aunt Linda suggested I go to the wedding solo and then have a separate celebration with Alex after. But the thought of attending an event that explicitly excludes the man I love makes me feel sick. I know my mom has been through a lot. Losing Dad was devastating for both of us, and I'm genuinely glad she's found happiness again, even if I have my reservations about Jim. But I can't condone her treatment of Alex. This isn't just about one wedding. It's about her overall attitude towards him and her refusal to accept him as part of my life long term. Am I being unreasonable here? Should I suck it up and go to the wedding solo to make her happy, or stand my ground? I'm really torn and could use some outside perspective. AITA for refusing to attend my mom's wedding unless my fiancé is invited. Update 1. Thank you all for the supportive comments and messages. Reading through everything really helped me feel less crazy about this whole situation. A few days after my initial post, I was at home working on some reports from my job at the local wildlife sanctuary when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was surprised to find my mom standing there. When I opened it, for a split second I thought maybe she'd come to apologize, but as soon as I saw her face, I knew that wasn't the case. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying, but there was a hardness to her expression that I recognized from our worst arguments. I hesitated but ultimately decided to let her in. As soon as the door closed behind her, she launched into a tearful monologue about how hurt she was that I would abandon her on her wedding day. She talked about how she'd always imagined having her only daughter by her side as she walked down the aisle, how she'd dreamed of this day for years. I stood there, arms crossed, as she went on and on. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Seeing my mom cry has always been hard for me, but a bigger part was angry that she was trying to manipulate me like this. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke up. I told her that I wanted to be there for her wedding, but not at the expense of excluding Alex. I reminded her that he's going to be her son-in-law and that deliberately uninviting him was hurtful, not just to him but to me as well. That's when things took a turn. My mom's tearful expression hardened, and she started in on how. She said things like, "What if he has an episode during the ceremony? You'll be so embarrassed, and I just don't want you to be burdened with taking care of him when you should be celebrating with me." I was livid. I told her in no uncertain terms that Alex is not a burden, and I wouldn't stand by while she treated him as one. My mom seemed to go into shock for a moment, just staring at me. Then she stood up abruptly, said she needed time to think, and left. I haven't heard from her since. My phone is still full of angry voicemails and text messages from her, my Aunt Linda, and some of the extended family, telling me I'm being unreasonable and selfish. I feel like I'm in an impossible situation. On one hand, I don't want to lose my mom, but on the other hand, I can't tolerate this blatant disregard for Alex. I'm sticking to my decision not to attend the wedding without Alex, and we've decided to start making our own plans for the future. But I'm struggling with this sense of loss and sadness over the rift with my mom. I've always hoped we'd find a way through this, but right now it feels like a huge divide. Update 2. It's been a few weeks since my last update, and things have settled down a bit. My mom has stopped calling and texting, and I've been able to focus more on my own well-being and the future with Alex. I've been reflecting on everything that's happened, and I wanted to update everyone on the situation. After the confrontation, I took some time to really consider my priorities. Alex and I talked a lot about what we want for our future, and it became clear that we needed to focus on creating a supportive and loving environment for ourselves free from toxic influences. We decided to move forward with planning our own wedding, a day that will truly celebrate our relationship and values. We are looking at a spring ceremony in a beautiful botanical garden, which feels like a perfect reflection of our love for nature and each other. As for my mom, I haven't reached out, and she hasn't tried to reconcile. I'm still heartbroken over the rift, but I've come to accept that it's a consequence of standing up for what's right. My Aunt Linda reached out again, expressing her sadness about the situation and saying that she hopes one day my mom will come to see things from my perspective. In the meantime, Alex and I are focusing on building our life together. We've been spending time on projects we're passionate about, like restoring a local nature reserve and working on a community garden. Our relationship has grown stronger through this process, and I'm grateful for that. We are looking forward to our wedding and the new chapter in our lives. And while I wish things were different with my mom, I'm finding peace in the support and love I do have. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice. It means the world to me. I'll keep updating as things develop, but for now we're moving forward with hope and positivity. Thanks for tuning in to today's Reddit story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on more amazing stories. See you next time.